3 for 3 on fourth downs today. Texas breaks the huddle. Different personnel package. Under center goes Ewers. He's got Brooks deep, 3 wide receivers. From the 2, fourth down, quick throw, caught in the slant by Worthy, folded up. Did he get in? I don't think he got there. The Sooners turned away Bevo on the goal line. They had first and goal at the 1, and they turned them away. Oh, mama!
And there it is. We're back. Sam and Chris with another edition of the Crimson Crred Podcast. The Friday after Bevo got turned away. Chris, I don't know about you. That was among the greatest moments of the 21st century for OU football, that goal line stand was.
You know, we've seen a couple goal line stands. We've seen a couple goal line stands this century from OU football. A couple of them against Oklahoma State. One in 2003, I believe it was. The other in 2020. None of them even came close to being as good as that one was or as exciting as that one was. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, the reason it's such an exciting one to have is because it really is emblematic of the transformation of our program to this point. Toward the very end of the Bob Stoops era, and obviously through the Lincoln Riley era, college football was revolutionizing. Oklahoma football was revolutionizing into something else. And it really put defense by the wayside. So seeing us usher that back in kind of closed the door on the Lincoln Riley era fully, see Brent be able to go in there and win the big game. It's huge, really big win, massive improvements over last year. The offense, seeing Dylan Gabriel really take the reins this year. He looks so much more confident this second year in Lebby's Oklahoma system. Just everything. It's incredible. What stuck out to you the most from this game? What was your favorite part aside from the goal line stand?
My favorite part aside from the goal line stand, it's honestly a combination of things. The first thing is how we don't have a single player on the defensive line who is just a dominant force. What it is the defensive line works together. They are a complete cohesive unit. Every one of them knows the exact blades of grass that the other one is about to step on. And they use that to they're just a unit. There's no other way to put it. They have just become so good. But not only did that really stick out to me, but also in some regards, most regards, not all of them, but in some regards, the game management aspect of Brent Venables on the last drive of the second half. You get that pass that was dropped by Tawi Walker, which would have been an easy walk-in touchdown. But the rest of that drive was solid. It was a 9-play, 67-yard drive that we got the ball with 1:53 left in the half. And we scored with no time left. Then at the end of the game, 1:17 to go in the game, we put together a 5-play, 75-yard absolute beauty of a drive that Dylan Gabriel could not have been any better on. So seeing the defensive line just work cohesively as a unit, and also Brent Venables' game management, that was something special to watch. And I tell you one other last thing. I told you last week that it was against Texas in 2020 that OU finally had their breakout game on the offensive line. Seeing players like Caden Green neutralize one of the best defensive players in the country, Tavondre Sweat, that was fun to see our offensive line do that.
Heck yeah, it was. And I'm really glad you bring up the game management piece of it from the head coaching seat, because last year, it wasn't like last year Venables was the worst game manager in the world, not at all. But you move into a new role like that. You go from having one side of the football under your purview to having to control the whole game. There's a learning curve that comes with that. And fortunately, he worked through that curve really quickly. Because this year we are back on top of things. the game is controlled well, our tempo is controlled well. When it gets late in games where we're ahead, we're really burning down the clock, which is nice to see. The whole thing, it's just that was a heck of a win, and everything that I think it means for our program right now and the future of it, especially as we head into the SEC. Oklahoma right now is riding high. I saw something the other day, and I think I sent it to you, but it was talking about how right now OU, if we were in the SEC this year, we would be number one in defensive scoring efficiency in the SEC, with Georgia and Alabama being a close second and third. I really thought that was interesting. Our defenses really seem to hit its stride as we've gone.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of defensive scoring efficiency, I heard some statistics earlier. I want to say it was Toby Rowland who was talking about it on a podcast he was on a guest on. I can't remember the name of it. It's the same network that does the Conversations with Coach with Bob Stoops. But he was talking about the statistic. I looked into it. OU has played 6 games this season. In those 6 games, they have allowed a grand total of 7 touchdowns, barely allowing 1 touchdown a game. And of those 7 touchdowns, only one of them was on the ground. It was Jonathan Brooks's run for, I think it was 29 yards against Oklahoma. That was the first time we've allowed someone on the ground into the end zone. And last year even, but especially during the Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch era, that just didn't happen. Teams ran all over us. We could not stop teams on the ground. But second, get this, of those 7 touchdowns that we have allowed, how many of them would you guess have come within 18 yards of the end zone? 18 yards or less, the touchdown was scored from.
Probably none.
Just one. It was the touchdown we gave up against SMU. They had it like 1st and goal at the 2 after a few penalties, and we gave up a touchdown there. Every other touchdown has had to come from at least 18 yards away. We have made it very clear this year, we don't have an elite defense. I wouldn't go as far to say we have a great defense, but we have a really good defense. They are a bend but don't break unit. They will let you get as close as you want to the end zone, but you are going to have to fight for every inch if you're going to try and get into the end zone.
Yeah, and I don't know that they're even really letting teams get as close as they want, because in the time we've been talking about, we've only been able to come up with really a couple examples where teams even got to the red zone to score their touchdown. So I'd say that's really a hallmark of a team that's building toward a great defense in what's going to be the home stretch of the season. Because looking ahead to the rest of our schedule, we've got plenty of opportunities for our defense, not only to stat pad, but to also get some work against, somewhat unique schemes in cool environments. We get to go to Lawrence, Kansas on the 28th of October, play the Jayhawks, go to Utah to face off against BYU later in November. I think as we look on this schedule and see what's left, there's a whole lot of winning ahead of us and a whole lot of potential for the defense. It's so crazy right now to think that OU is in the driver's seat to a playoff spot right now, not on the heels of an offense that's putting up 700 yards a game. It's on the heels of a defense that is so much improved over last season, and right now is in the top ranks throughout the country in several stat categories. When you look at the defense so far this year, and you're thinking about the playmakers, the ones that have really made the biggest difference for us this year, I know who I've got my eye on. Who do you have?
So the main player I have my eye on isn't someone who's made a bunch of tackles. He hasn't intercepted any passes, but he is there every play. At the end of the play, you always see his jersey number. You always see his name, whether he was helping on the tackle, whether he made the tackle, whether he broke up a pass, whether he forced a fumble. That player is number 22, Peyton Bowen.
Yeah.
It is very rare that in a Brent Venables defense, you see a true freshman out there starting every game. I guess he technically didn't start the first game of the season. He played a bunch of snaps against SMU, and then starting him from that point on was a no-brainer for Venables.
Yeah, he played his way into it.
Yeah, it's just seeing the effect he's had with every 5-star. You wonder, are they going to play like a 5-star, or are they going to be overrated? We saw it with Rhett Bomar. We saw it with a whole bunch of other players that come in. We saw it with the linebacker Clayton Smith. He's still in college right now. I think he got a 5th star on Rivals. He was a 4-star everywhere else. One of the top linebackers in the country, or edge rushers. He comes into Oklahoma. He barely plays in 2021. Last year, he got almost no play time. And then he knew that he wasn't even going to be on the 3rd string coming into this year. So he transferred to Arizona State. Seeing a true freshman come in and have that type of impact on our defense, that's just phenomenal. And seeing how well he's playing as a freshman, I'm sure Brent Venables will tell you, he still probably doesn't have a full grasp on the defense. He has a good idea of what he needs to do. He has a good idea of where plays are going to go. But we all know that Brent Venables runs a scheme that's so complex, he's not going to know fully everything he needs to know yet. So that really has me pumped about what year 2 will look like for him. And I tell you one other thing about the defense right now. I'm going to give you the entirety of last year's stats, and then what we look like through 6 games this year. If you read the posts on the Soonerpocket.com, you saw these stats last night. But get this. Last year, OU allowed 29.6 points per game. This year so far, we're allowing 14 points per game.
That's 2 touchdowns different.
Mm-hmm. And get this. Last year, throughout the entirety of the season, interceptions and fumbles combined, bowl game against Florida State combined, we forced 17 turnovers all of last year. This year, through 6 games, we've forced 15. One of them was a forced fumble by Peyton Bowen against Texas, knocked the ball out of Quinn Ewers' hands. We're on track to get 30 regular season turnovers. I can't remember OU's defense ever doing that. The rushing yards allowed per game. Last year, we were allowing 189 rushing yards per game. This year, 114.5.
Dang. That's got to be from some of the defensive line conditioning in the offseason,
yep.
You know?
And the competitive depth too. I mean, we have a whole bunch. It's not just 4 guys who are expected to play 90 snaps a game. There's probably 10 or 12 guys that we throw in there all throughout the game, and that seriously helps us.
Yeah, no doubt. And one of those that's thrown in there consistently, you talk about someone that's on every play, is Danny Stutzman. And you talk about
Absolutely.
An archetype of a Brent Venables defense. Pretty much every Venables defense, looking back to Clemson, you know, you have James Skalski most recently at Clemson, but you have that real stud of a linebacker, or even a strong safety, but someone on the defense there that is really taking a leadership role and doesn't just make the rest, they don't just make themselves better. You know, they don't just improve themselves throughout the season. They make the whole team better. That whole defense is better when Danny Stutzman is out there. And hearing his quote, by the way, just to go on this, Oklahoma only fears God, Texas fears Oklahoma. All-time quote. Look forward to seeing that painted on the walls of, the football stadium, locker rooms and stuff throughout the years. That's going to end up somewhere on a sign, but just such a playmaker. And, on the other half of the ball, someone that's also putting themselves in spots to make plays and, make everyone around them better, make an immediate impact when they're on the field. Nick Anderson, game-winning catch against Texas, having the stat line that he did early against Tulsa, if I'm not mistaken.
3 catches, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, Nick Anderson is carrying the family name proudly. for the Sooners. Seeing him out there, being a younger guy and making a difference, trying to take the reins of the offense a little bit and get himself into spots to succeed. He's not just someone that's out there hoping to be put into a play. He's making the plays. And that's got to be great for Dylan Gabriel to have a target like that. Obviously, it's been Andrew Anthony to this point, and we're going to be Andrew Anthony free the rest of the season, unfortunately, due to the injury he sustained. So there's going to be a bit of a vacuum there for someone to step into. I think you're going to see Farouk fill a lot of that. Drake Stoops has the senior leadership qualities, obviously, but Nick Anderson has a really unique opportunity to separate himself from the rest of the receiving core a little bit in terms of his playmaking ability, and put himself on a big level going into the home stretch of the season. Potentially, I emphasize potentially, but potentially working toward a playoff berth.
Definitely. I think we certainly have a shot at the playoffs, but I'm not ready to commit to that yet. OU finds a way to break my heart every year. I'm waiting for it to happen.
Who do we lose to, though? Say we don't make it. Who did we lose to that's not in the Big 12 championship?
Who we would have lost to, I see a couple teams being possibilities. They're all teams that we should beat by 40. No excuse not to, but it's in Oklahoma's character to have one mistake early in like the second quarter, and by halftime we're losing by 3 scores. It's either going against BYU in Provo or going up against West Virginia in Norman. West Virginia, we saw last night against Houston. They are not a very good team, but they're good enough. They are good enough to make you have to fight for it. They're a team that I kind of think like the Broncos versus the Chiefs last night. All measurables, the Chiefs should have probably beaten the Broncos 52-7, but instead the final score was 19-6, 19-8 or something like that, maybe 16-8. It was a game that the Chiefs struggled the whole game against a team that they really should have beaten by 50. So those two teams, I really see potentially giving us a hard time. If we are going to drop a game, it'll be to one of those two, West Virginia or BYU. But I tell you, someone who's not gonna allow it if they have anything to say about it. That's our wide receiver, Jalil Farouk. I can't remember if I mentioned this at the beginning of the season, but I was not too high on Jalil Farouk coming into the season. He made some nice plays last season. The touchdown catch against Nebraska, the touchdown catch against Oklahoma State. But you see, the thing is, on those, he was wide open on both of them. He had a nice touchdown catch too against Florida State that was in coverage. He wasn't very consistent last year. You never knew if he was going to catch a contested ball or drop a wide open pass. There's just no way of knowing. But the work Emmett Jones has done with him this year, his stats so far on the year, 20 catches for 415 yards, averaging 20.8 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. Both of those touchdowns, it was the exact same route. A touchdown against SMU and then one against Tulsa. It was a deep slant where he had someone in tight coverage. He just threw him off of him and waltzed in for a touchdown. On the SMU one, he broke a defender's ankles, but he's been so consistent. I think the only drop he has on the year was against Arkansas State, and that was a little overthrown. He had to dive after it. He has a phenomenal pair of hands. He will not be denied on any passes. We saw it against Texas. We saw it against Tulsa. We saw it against SMU. We've seen it in every game this year that he's just an incredible guy. And with Andrew Anthony out, he and Nick Anderson are definitely going to be battling for that number 1 wide receiver role.
Yeah. No doubt, man. No doubt. Well, Oklahoma in the bye week this week. We've got some decent games on the slate. Seeing Massachusetts visit Penn State. No, I'm just kidding. That one's not going to be a game. 42-point favorite Nittany Lions. I don't see them covering 42 points, but I think they kill them. Oregon and Washington. facing off. 2:30 Central on ABC. That's going to be a big one. A lot of playoff implications there. I feel like right now as a Pac-12 team, you don't have a loss to give if you want to keep your playoff eligibility, just because the Pac-12 is so stacked this year. If you lose one game, I just don't see how you come back from it and get ahead of the other teams that, if they stay undefeated. It's a hard one for me to make a case for somebody that's one loss out of the Pac-12 this season to get into the playoff. So that'll be interesting. Kansas and Oklahoma State in Big 12 play going to be a big one for sure. USC and Notre Dame. And then Miami going to North Carolina. Maybe Mario will take the knee this time if they get ahead late in the game. Who knows? Which of those games are you most excited for? Do you see any potential upsets?
I think Kansas versus Oklahoma State is a huge game for Oklahoma State. They have found a rhythm lately with their offense. They finally decided to just play one quarterback in a game, Alan Bowman, and their offense is honestly their offense has honestly been kind of humming ever since. Their defense has also seemed to find their identity, and Kansas will be without their star quarterback, Jalen Daniels. So we'll see what happens. I think Kansas could very easily find a way to win this, but in Stillwater, with a team that's been finding their identity lately, finding out who they are and how they want to play, I could very well see Oklahoma State pulling off the upset. Ohio State at Purdue, they should murder Purdue. It should be an absolute slaughter.
Purdue's a funny game, though, isn't it?
It's a funny game. And get this, every Ohio State head coach since I think 1943 or 1947, every Ohio State head coach has lost a game at Purdue. I'm sure we all remember the 2018 blowout that was unranked Purdue over number 2 Ohio State. Beat them, I think the score's like 49-20 or something like that. I mean, it was destruction. Mm-hmm. That could be a dangerous game. And also Syracuse versus Florida State. Syracuse isn't a bad team, and Florida State has shown that when they're going up against teams that they should destroy, they struggle for a little bit, especially like against Boston College, almost allowing a big comeback. So those could all definitely be interesting games. Going back to OU for just a second, there's a stat that I meant to bring up earlier that I completely forgot about. Did you know that OU has yet to allow a point on the opening drive on defense once this year? And here's how those drives ended up. Arkansas State, punt. SMU, punt. Tulsa, Gentry Williams interception to start the game. So punt,
that
interception.
Sounds familiar.
The next game, Cincinnati, punt to start the game. The next game, Iowa State, Billy Bowman, pick 6. The next game, Texas, Gentry Williams interception. We have either forced a punt or intercepted a pass to start every game this season, which has me hyped up. But anyways, back to what we were talking about. Some of the other games that should be slaughters. I think Georgia is going to obliterate Vanderbilt and that new scoreboard that they've been trying to build. I think Utah will find a way to come together this week against a Cal team that honestly isn't bad, but I think they'll find a way. This should be a good game. Texas A&M versus Tennessee. Texas A&M, they haven't really missed a step with their quarterback going down for the season. Connor Wigman, they haven't missed a step. And Joe Milton has proven to be the underwhelming player, the most underwhelming player of the year. People were talking about the cannon he has for an arm, which he does. He can throw it a long way. It's not very accurate. 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on the year. Not very good for an offense as high-powered as Tennessee's is. Auburn versus LSU could be a good game. This is a nice slate of games this week. This is a really nice slate of games. How do you see USC doing against Notre Dame?
USC probably wins that one.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think
Notre Dame would have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, Notre Dame, they have a good defense. They've been very stale on offense lately. Against a ranked team, they have yet to score more than I think like 7. No, wait, they scored 20 against Louisville, but that was a garbage time touchdown. They have not played well on offense against ranked teams. USC doesn't have a good defense, but Notre Dame, I don't think, has the ability to stop Caleb Williams.
No, but we'll see. Could be interesting. You've been listening, Crimson Crred Podcast. Sam and Chris headed into the OU bye week. No game this weekend, but we'll be back next week with another edition of Crimson Crred. Make sure to check out Chris's blog, Sooner Pocket. That's at SoonerPocket.com. Lots of great content on there. For Chris, I'm Sam, and have a great week.
Sooner.